Hello, in today's video we're going to fix Shimano Ultegra RD-R8050. You can follow these tips and tricks how to do it, but please take care when using any electrical equipment, cutting, drilling and things like that. I cannot take responsibility if something happens to you. This is just a guide, so take care and be careful. So this was sent to me from Ireland. And as you can tell, it's all the way up, but if you try to shift again, the mech makes ticking noise. That means the internal gear, half-moon gear, reached the end or casing and cannot shift any longer. So I suspect there might be 2 or 3 options. Option number 1, the motor bolts or screws are loose, they completely fell off. Number 2, the position sensor got confused. Or number 3, the gearbox is stripped. So let's take it out open and see what's inside. So now we need to take it out. As you can see, these are security screws, so I just cut incisions in them, one by one. And then, when they're still warm or hot, try to crack them open or loose. Because there is lots of retaining compound or Loctite. So when you make a incision, you actually heat it up to make it softer. Then circlip can go out. A spring. Now onto the second bolt. Second one. Now, because this one here has a limited access, I use a drill. So I start with a 2.5 millimeters just to make a pilot hole. This to ensure that you are in the middle of the head. And then I follow with a 3 millimeter. And just take it slowly. As you can see, you need to stay in the middle. And now head come off completely. And you can just lift it off. Just like that. So that's your servo. And then this bolt here, whatever is remaining, I clamp it in vise and take it off like that. Now this is off. I'm going to clean it, but before you do it, you can do some checks. So when you take it off, that should operate really smooth. Obviously that's currently spring loaded, but if you have any tension here or resistance, that means the pin inside is corroded. So when you take it off, make sure obviously that operates smoothly. Then you can check for any damage on the servo, so that looks okay. Now this cam here, you can either use a cam puller or pulley puller, but usually what I do, I just clamp it in a vise and tap it with a hole punch. So you can clamp it here, place something there and tap it out. Okay, now everything is off. We need to clean it, because obviously that's the best time to clean it, both body and servo, and then we're gonna take it open. Okay, now everything is cleaned, so that's nice and clean. That can go to this one side. Same with the top cap and all these bits. Now the most fun part. So this is ultrasonically welded or sealed. As you can see, there's a seam going all the way around. So if you want to repair it and make sure it's going to last a long time, you need to cut it open. And what I usually do, I've made myself a little knife, and as you can see, there are some notches which I cut with another knife. And you can have to, oh, you have to go around, where do I start? And literally just apply even pressure and cut it through. As you can see, you're making incision. So that takes about, depend how fast you are and then how confident you are, between half an hour to sometimes 40 minutes, depending obviously how efficient you are with sewing. I would advise against using Dremel, because obviously, number one, Dremel is a high-speed device and creates heat, and that's going to melt plastic. Secondly, there's loads of, there's a PCB around here and cables around there, so you may damage them. And if you're making incision using a knife, then literally you can seal it back together without any compromise. Whereas if you use any mechanical tools, that's going to create at least 2-3 millimeter gap, and that's going to be very difficult to seal and make it watertight again. So I'm not going to waste your time to spend 40 minutes even on a high speed. So I'm gonna take it away and then come back to you when that's cut open. Okay, so that's now cut open, and I'll show you why. So 2 seconds. As you can see, you got 2 locating pins, one here and one there. If you go crazy with Dremel, that may damage it. So this is what a remake looks inside. As you can see, that's Ultegra, but PCB is same as the Derailleur's. Wrong bit. And the problem is water damage. As you can see, that's all corroded. So let's hope we can clean it. The problem is, if there's too much corrosion, that would mean, number one, some of the PCB paths would be corroded, and as soon as I touch it, they're gonna fall off completely. And this would also demonstrate in a drainage of battery. So if you hook up your fully charged battery, it literally goes within a day or two. So we'll see. I use just a spirit. You can use a isopropyl alcohol or anything. Don't use white spirit. And I got my toothbrush. And see if that's going to so there's a lot of build-up. And we'll see. Yeah, just another thing that Di2, I'm just going to take it off, give myself a little bit of break. Di2 is not waterproof, it's water resistant if you maintain it and look after it. Again, that is a another example where I can't see much of a grease inside, which would possibly prevent water damage. And if you look here, that half moon obviously hit the frame, that's why obviously you couldn't rotate anymore, and that's quite lodged. As you can see, that's bone dry inside, so a little bit of grease would have prevented it. So you can take that bit off. And as a preventative measure, I'm going to take these two bolts off and then re-put them or reinstall them using a lot of Loctite, because that's the biggest challenge I found with many BMX, Ultegra pretty much, and Derailleur 11 speed. They failing because these two bolts are coming off and that bracket's coming loose and those gears are disengaged. Okay, I'm gonna continue cleaning it and then come back to you if I've made a success. Okay, so the cleaning is complete, or as much as I can go. It's not perfect, but there are no connected paths now. So yeah, we'll see, we're gonna test it in a minute, but before we do it, first of all, that's one of the most common issues. So these bolts are coming loose. Yeah, as you can see, there's not much Loctite on them. So we're going to top it up. I dropped it into Loctite, but again, it doesn't hurt. That doesn't go anywhere now. Again, if they're still in a body, I would do one at the time, so that's gonna make sure the bracket is in one position. Do it up nice and tight. Again, not much. Dab of Loctite. That's ready to go. Next thing is obviously we need to take that brass bushing, clean it, and also O-ring, which, oh, there it is. That O-ring, so make sure it's nice and clean. Just like that. Same for that brass bushing. Clean it nicely. Remove any, as you can see, there's still some dirt. See, all of that. And now I use white waterproof grease. and you can go to town with that. It's better to have more than not at all, because that's going to give you more chances whilst riding in wet. O-ring goes first. Just like that. Followed by brass bushing. And I just push it with 5mm Allen key. Just like that. As you can see, you can test it obviously with a nice and clean. There's plenty of grease before you put that gear. Next goes the motor. Then that little gear, and just say start it off a little bit. But again, before you do it, dab of grease, make it smooth. Just like that. Then we got the gearbox. Gearbox goes in, and at this time we're not putting that in yet. So you need to push it just like that. That goes in nicely. You need only one screw at this time. Then clean your hands. Next goes PCB, and obviously if you look, this magnet, every time you shift the gear, that makes a 180-degree rotation, and that green bit with a gold stripe at the end, that's position sensor, so that counts gear changes. So sometimes that gets confused. But often when you got shorted circuit, like in this case, because of the water damage, that may have sent wrong signals, or the unit was shifting but it wasn't receiving any signals. Now we can connect it just like that. Make some room. And then we're connecting that bit here. And testing. Okay, that shifts 10 times up and down. The next step is you need to zero it, so obviously going into adjustment mode. On 80/50, 91/50 you got 16 clicks either way, so just go all the way to the one end. And then 16 times. And now that's bang on the middle, or zero. Now we're gonna take it off. Again. Gearbox out. That may fall off sometimes, but it's not a problem. Goes back in. Now, more grease on this bit here, and also on those teeth. And now the tricky bit, again, another tricky bit. So you have to lift this one slightly up, just like that. You slide that and hold it, and then that goes in just like that. And then if you're lucky, it goes in. As you can see, that gap is way too much, so you need to, ideally, you would have, let me just clean it up slightly. When you put it together, you need about between 2 and 3 millimeters gap. And then we can put it together. And one thing, obviously, when this is set up like that, you are at the bottom or 11th gear on the cassette, or hardest gear. Now the PCB goes in. Before I put it in, I'm gonna put some Vaseline on these connections. I know Vaseline is not perfect dielectric grease, but it's good at oxidation prevention. And should keep it because that already started oxidize. It may get worse. That should do. All screws in. Just need to find the one which escaped. And the moment of the truth. As you can see, everything works. Last thing to do before we start putting it back together is to clean this bit off. Again, as you can see, loads of dirt and water. Look after your bikes, guys and gals. Nice and clean. Same as this one. Again, waterproof grease that goes in. A little bit more. By the way, I'm not sponsored by grease, but I've learned hard way that if you don't put enough, it's gonna cost you. So again, that's nicely put inside. Now we need to just say clean mating surfaces with a bit of alcohol. Connect it, make sure that's nice and tight. Then when you're putting together, make sure obviously that locating pin and one on this side are going to the hole, and also move that cable inside, and when you put it together, this is why it's quite important to use a blade, because obviously, as you can see, everything is nice and connected together. So to put it or to seal it again, I use a soldering iron and I weld it together. Don't use any glue or adhesives, because obviously that's quite rigid, and when you shift, that's going to move a lot, quite a lot of torsion. So welding, I found, is the best. I've been riding Durace, Rare Mech and XT in quite appalling conditions for past 2-3 years, and obviously everything was repaired, had no issues whatsoever. So yeah, I'm not going to show how I do it, purely because obviously there's a lot of risks. Make sure if you do it, you're safe, you wear PPE equipment, and definitely respirator mask, proper one, because obviously these fumes are quite toxic. It's a plastic and it's definitely not healthy for you. So I'm gonna come back to you when I finish it. Okay, so this is the final result. Everything has been welded all the way around. Now another fun bit, we need to put it together, but don't forget grease. This is how it goes. Next bit is cover. Then I use a 2.5mm, 10mm long Torx T8 Torx screws. Loctite. Not too much. There is. another one. Okay, now that's put together. So the tricky bit is you have to install on your bike and without anything, so that needs to move freely. And using limit screws, the high limit screw, you need to set the top jockey wheel on 11th gear or the lowest sprocket and make sure it's nice and bang on in the middle. So that's going to ensure that, obviously, because that's zeroed out and that's going to be in the middle of your 11 speed or 11 teeth cog, that's going to make sure, obviously, your adjustments should be zero, assuming that your bike is correct. And by that I mean you don't have any bend hanger. But if you're not planning to sell it on, if that's set to zero, it's going to be much better for your cassettes. Okay, so when you adjust it, so as you can see, I've adjusted both limit screws up and down. What you do, you place that cam, then put that on top of it, and then you need to rotate it so that bit is fully engaged, as you can see, and obviously that hole is aligned, has to be in the middle. If you got even half of a turn this way or that way, then your alignment's gonna be possibly between -8 and -12. Worst case scenario, if you messed up putting things together, if the half-mount gear inside is either too close or too far away from that wall, then you have a problem. So you have to take it apart. So before you seal everything together, I would just double check, make sure everything is in the right order. So similar, so now as you can see, everything is in bang in the middle. So similar way how I took it off, I just clamp it in the vise just a little bit, and then place a hole punch on this side and tap that in. Okay, so now that's installed, so I can show you how it works. So as you can see now, that's bang in the middle. You take it off. You install that spring here, then a dab of grease, and just press it like that. Then we install a bolt. That's the final one. Open up, circlip, on, and now the spring, I just use again L-shaped pick, and that goes in. Just to double check all of these are done up properly. And that's it. The job is finished. I'm gonna touch it up later on, but now we're gonna install the bike, make sure it shifts nicely. Thanks for watching, and until next time.